start recording there. And turn down my fan a little bit. But only a little. Bam. Bo. We have no formal intro for this currently.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Quick, do like a little news zoom in.
Okay,
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another exciting episode, the first exciting episode of Demonstrate the Loop. I am the co-host, and barely even the co-host, probably more of just a side. And this is Drew's episode.
This is Drew the Loop. This is Demonstrate the Loop, a Magic the Gathering podcast, probably. That's its intention, anyway. This is our first episode. We will be trying out a lot of things in the first couple, just trying to find the bearings. But, as Daniel said, I'll be leading us off with our first episode. This episode, as you probably were able to glean if I titled it properly, is about the companion mechanic. And more specifically, how I view companion as being kind of not necessarily the future of the partner mechanic as from Wizards' perspective, but what I believe could be the best possible outcome for partner and partner-like abilities for the Commander format.
So you could call this episode, because we did a news style intro this time.
We did.
So you would call it something along the lines of partner. Or no, it'd be companion, the new partner, find out. Like something like that.
New mechanic introduced, is partner? So
That's a good one. I like that a lot. That's nice.
yeah, I don't know how hard we're going to end up being on the newspaper thing, but so far, pretty hard.
So far it's 100%, so I'd like to see anything else try to rear its ugly head and get squashed.
I would like... Yes.
Go ahead.
So this is more of a kind of an opinion thing. I do want to lay an argument here, kind of get a conversation started. We're obviously going to have the episode itself contain a bit of that. But definitely it's... people who, after kind of listening to it, if you have your own thoughts, what we argued well, contradictions, or if you have another opinion on it, we'll have places for you to comment that, because that's how shows or any kind of media does well on the internet, as they get commented on, etc. But the top line argument I'm looking to make today is around the companion mechanic and how I believe it fits into Commander broadly and how it fits into partners specifically. So I think the first thing we got to do is, just for people who may not be fully aware, is kind of go over what companion is currently. Just go over the literal definition there.
Yes.
Currently, there are 10 cards with the companion mechanic that were released with the latest Ikoria set. One of each hybrid 2-color pair. Notably, one of them is banned in our format, that is Lutri the Spellchaser, and one of them is functionally banned as companion Yorion, by nature of their requirement being impossible to meet in our format. Generally speaking, with companions, the companions, to gain access to them, they are all regular creatures if they are just in the 99 of your deck. But if you meet their companion requirement, they are able to start outside the game, in which case you effectively have access to them as an extra card from the start of the game. For people's benefit, I think we should probably just name... kind of go over like an example. So as an example companion, we have Garuda Doom of Depths. Garuda Doom of Depths is 4 and then hybrid Dimir, so 4 blue or black, for a legendary creature Demon Kraken 6/6. Now Garuda as a card has an ETB, an enters the battlefield effect, that causes each player to mill the top 4 cards of their library, and then you will essentially reanimate any of those creatures that has an even converted mana cost directly onto the battlefield. Pretty powerful on its own, especially if you're already in a deck that's, kind of running like Memory Plunder, running a lot of just kind of steal effects, a lot of like Grave Betrayals or anything similar to that. But a pretty powerful card already in a deck that's already in that archetype, and also in an archetype that's not, dominant or not everywhere, but a pretty, I think Theft of other decks cards is a pretty like established archetype in the format. That's played.
It's a pretty decent archetype because in Commander specifically, you will have 4 opponents, and all of them will probably be playing, especially if you're going hard on the mill plan, you will have 3 opponents, let's say in a 4-person game, playing good cards. And so your odds of being able to actually play the game by taking somebody else's good thing increases. Just, you won't win, but you'll stay alive a little longer.
Yes.
And I think that's important.
And another thing that a lot of people in kind of the content creator community, and a lot of people just kind of in the Commander community speak on, with these decks that are either about, taking control of other players' permanents or spells, taking other people, essentially playing other people's decks, is decks that are in that archetype kind of scale well with different power levels. So a lot of people like to have at least one deck that has that kind of strategy in their rotation, because it's kind of a deck you can always play and have a good time with the table, because that deck's rarely going to be oppressive or pub stomp or anything like that, because it's dependent on, like you said, your opponent's playing good cards. Now Garuda has another thing. So again, this is a card, and I feel like a lot of the companions are this way. This is a card that you would and probably could slot into just about any deck on its own. Maybe it doesn't, it's 6 mana for a 6/6, but it also has a reanimation effect stapled onto it. You could probably say this would see play in most decks, but it also has the companion ability, where as long as your starting deck contains only cards with even converted mana costs, this will start outside the game, meaning that you kind of have it guaranteed some access to it every single game, which I think definitely kicks it up a notch in like how powerful this is versus like I think I already mentioned like Memory Plunder as an example. Just for people who are listening to it and not Googling or something similar.
Ooh,
Plunder.
I think I can do Memory Plunder. Memory Plunder is 4 Dimir mana, so blue or black. It is an instant. And then you may cast target instant or sorcery card from an opponent's graveyard without paying its mana cost.
Yes. Now, that's a pretty bonkers card.
I love that card.
Yeah, that card's amazing. So you kind of see a similar effect there. It's also in the same colors, and so you kind of just wait out and you look at people's decks. And this one you would probably choose a specific player because of how the card is worded, and you would have to. But yeah, it just kind of takes a card out and you get immediate access to it. Garuda, you don't get access to their entire graveyard, so it is a bit more narrow. But if you're playing in a I would say an average pod, probably has at least 1 or 2 creature-focused decks in it. And so you're able to kind of reanimate on that. And it kind of goes up there. So that's the companion mechanic. Generally, you find that, and I mean, if you just do a search on like, Scryfall or Gatherer, or wherever you get your podcasts, if you do a search for cards with companion, you'll find, I think, I would probably say that none of them to me jump out as being like bad. I don't think any of these cards, if you were to remove the companion text from them, are bad cards, but definitely the ability to start the game with one is what makes them get really any attention at all. Is there anything further I think we
yes
say about companion?
For Commander specifically,
yeah.
it is the only format that people are not pretty furious that companion exists.
Yes, and I think that's actually probably a good thing to also mention here. At the time that we record this episode, so one companion is banned in Commander, and I think it's specifically like as none of the bans are banned as companion, so I don't know if that's actually relevant. But yeah, one is banned in Commander.
Lutri is banned.
Lutri the Spell Chaser.
Yeah, he's banned entirely.
Yorion doesn't.
Yorion cannot be used as a companion.
Yeah, Yorion literally doesn't function. If you're curious on those, if you go to the Commander Rules Committee site, they have a full write-up on why Lutri is banned. Yorion, I'm not going to go into the entire card, but essentially Yorion's companion requirement needs you to have 20 cards more than the starting, more than 60, or 20 cards more than the deck minimum, but in Commander, deck size and the number of cards in a deck is a fixed part of the format that you cannot change, and that doesn't change because you want to run Yorion. So those two don't function. And recently, I believe because of the status of the show, I should have the actual information. Recently, there were actually bans around two other companions, with Luris of the Dream Den recently getting banned in both Legacy and Vintage, and Zerda getting a ban from Legacy. Notably, Luris getting banned because what it had already done to those formats, and Zerda getting banned because of what it could do to those formats, which is in the write up there, which I think is pretty interesting. With the perspective of, I think in part of the write-up, I'm not going to quote them directly because I'm not looking at the write-up here, but I believe it was in the absence of Luris, they believed that Zerda would just immediately fill an equally abusable role in those formats. But we have now, of the 10 that exist, as we're recording it, and I'll note that Ikoria, the set that all of these are from, got released in paper 7 days ago. like literally
Yes.
just got released in paper. We now have, across all formats, 3 of these cards are actually banned, and one of them doesn't function, but I don't think Yurion's in the same kind of category as being like, oh, this is abusable. But 3 of them have already been, so 30% of these have been banned. Notable voices in the community, I know Saffron Olive over at MTG Goldfish also did a video write-up essentially laying out the case for Companion being the single worst mechanic in the history of the game. So I feel like suffice it to say that opinions are pretty strong about Companion in general for constructed tournament Magic. And I think just to make sure that we cover all the bases here, Lutri also was an unprecedented event when it hit Commander by nature of being banned before seeing release. Lutri the Spell Chaser got banned prior to being released in any capacity, in any client, and playable in any form. Like, unless you play some weird format of Magic where you take cards as they're spoiled and write them onto index cards or paper and then play with your own things, any other form of Magic that you can play, Lutri was banned as Commander before that happened. So all of them.
Let me tell you something that's interesting is that. And I actually, just as an aside, because I don't know, because of everything going on, I don't know how many people have gotten to go to like an LGS and draft this set.
Yeah.
But this set is super fun to draft. Companion is super enjoyable and limited. I love Companion when it is like only meshing with its own set.
Yeah.
It's really, really fun to try to take like your mishmash of cards and be like, oh, okay, I'm throwing this, like my draft packs, I'm picking just anything with an even mana cost. These aren't good, and I have better cards, but I want to try out Companion, and it is a blast. But that being said, when the start of your set on release, the first thing banned is in one of the most casual formats, and then you work your way up from there.
There's
pretty bad. Not great. When you say, "Hey, this is the fun new set," the format that's only for fun, that we're banning a card in there now. Yeah. In the for fun format, and then that should be good. Oh, but also every other format,
and then
except standard. Yeah,
and
I think modern.
So far, none have hit standard. But yeah, it's Luris has been banned in what I perceive. I don't play these formats. I've watched a good bit of them. I don't play them, but Luris has been banned to what I would probably argue are 2 of the highest power level formats, Legacy and Vintage. And I mean, I think those are highest power level by nature of, similar to Commander, having access to all of the cards. And then Zerta having a ban in Legacy, which again has access to all of the cards. So, but I think all of that though just to say that the opinions around Companion as a format are pretty divisive. Now I will say regarding Lutri's and Commander, and regarding Commander in general, because that's kind of where the discussion is centered, is Lutri was an unprecedented event, while also being for most of the discussions I saw online. I know Josh and Jimmy at the Command Zone, Commander's Quarters, Tolarian, Goldfish as well. Pretty much every major content creator in the Magic space basically mentioned kind of in the same breath of it being unprecedented while also agreeing with the decision in specific. And that's also most of the discussion online around Lutri I've seen in Commander as well. By the nature of Lutri the Spell Chaser, just because we're kind of talking about it, and it as a single card I think is the most relevant to our discussion. One, hybrid is it, so one blue or red for a 3/2 elemental otter with flash, and when it enters the battlefield, if you cast it, you copy an instant or sorcery spell you control. You may choose new targets for the copy. Notable because this is what got it banned, is that the starting companion requirement for Lutri is that each of your non-land cards has a different name. Now, you may notice that is just one of the things for Commander that you have to do anyway. So essentially, for the Commander format, this companion requirement is that you play the format you're already playing, and that I think is kind of the sole reason. Based on, if you look at Lutri the Spell Chaser, and then compare it. Yeah.
I know that this isn't a popular opinion, but in my my Niv Mizzet Perun Persistent Petitioner 7 Dwarves deck, I wouldn't have been able to run Lutri.
You would not.
Doesn't even seem fair.
You know, in my Nicol Bolas, Grixis, Shadowborn Apostle, Relentless Rats, Persistent Petitioners, and 7 Dwarves deck, I also can't run Lutri. And I should.
So there you go. It's not an auto include.
Those are
Bam.
two decks. Those are two decks that are running wild in the format that are not running Lutri. All of the other decks with red or blue, though, are. And I think the other key thing to mention is you compare it to a similar card. A lot of discussions around this. Dual Caster Mage got brought up. Dual Caster Mage is 1 red for a 2/2 human wizard with flash. When it enters the battlefield, copy an instant or sorcery. You may choose new targets. Notably, every single line of text, except for the fact that Dual Caster Mage is not an elemental otter, is strictly better on Dual Caster Mage compared to Lutri. This is a strictly better card. This card is not banned at all. This card is not oppressive in the format. This card is not even a staple in the format, really. And so you look at Dual Caster. There are certain decks that it is, but it's not a staple of like its color at all. Whereas Lutri, the big complaint was, if you are in blue or red, you are running Lutri. There is no opportunity cost. You're not giving up a card slot. You're just getting a free. Even if Lutri is a vanilla creature, getting a free 101st 3/2 creature with no other deck building consideration, you just kind of do it. That's the state of Companion as it is now. There is one banned in our format, one unfunctional as a companion, and all of them are otherwise legal in the 99. Now, what I'm looking to argue today is specifically with the companion cards in their companion role. I think all of the cards are generally pretty good in the 99, obviously of a deck that fits their strategy. But I don't think it's fair. I don't think it's a very interesting show topic to just go like, here's 9 cards that are pretty good if you are already doing what they want you to do. I specifically want to look at.
I'd be down for that discussion. Like, which of the companions makes the best commander and not necessarily companion? I'd be down.
Oh, and
I've literally not seen anybody talk about that.
Which ones do that? But specifically, I'm looking at these through the guise of partner. Now, what I kind of want to go over here is I want to go over my argument in a couple phases here. The first thing is I want to kind of go over the partner mechanic in general, to kind of lay my case here. Partner, there's got as an aside, there may be like a better way to kind of segue that argument. We've established what companion is. I feel like I've got it. All right. Drew, when you're editing this, cut back in right here. So, now that we've gotten a pretty good... Now that we have an understanding of companion as a mechanic and its current state, there's a lot of contention with it in other formats. I do want to kind of end off the discussion as we kind of segue the focus of this discussion back to companion in Commander, is why companion was developed. Now that we're kind of a week out from the paper release of the game, and it's been out in digital for now kind of a while, a few weeks at least, there have been a lot of design articles, and there's actually been a lot of things published from the Wizards mothership about Companion, from its designer from the set, from Mark Rosewater, Gavin Verhey. A lot of the people who designed the game have now kind of spoken on it. And it seems kind of one of the shared things is to give a little bit of Commander being what I think is statistically the most popular format. It has the largest player base. Give a little bit of what makes it unique and what attracts players to it to the other formats. It seems that it hasn't gone over what I would call, it hasn't gone over great for those formats, but I feel like there was an instinct to kind of dismiss Companion as a mechanic in Commander out of hand, because you look at what it does for the other formats and go like, well, we already have that by having the Commander. So I want to first kind of take a look at partners in general. So partner as a mechanic was first introduced in Commander 2016. Notably, that was the first Commander set that had 4 color partners in it, at least 4 color legal partners. Prior to that, I know that some casual play groups would run one of the 4 or one of the 5 Nephilim from, I think, Dissension, the original Ravnica set, as quote-unquote unofficial commanders, as they were the only 4 color creatures that existed. But none of those are legendary. So in this set, not only did they release a set of 5 4-color commanders covering every 4-color option, they also released, I believe it was 15 legendary creatures with partner. I can check that. And it's showing me all of them. I'm going to say it's 15. So, notably, 1 of each allied color pair and 2 for the enemy color pairs. Partner is a mechanic to kind of go over it. So this is partner specifically. It's the one that's on all of the creatures that just have flat partner, but it's you are allowed to have 2 commanders if both have partner. So if you were to take Bruised Tarl, the one that is red-white, and if you were to take Kaidel, Chosen of Krufix, the one that is green-blue, you now are able to play a deck that is basically every color but black with that. Now, partner, if you look at it statistically, and you're able to do this kind of looking at EDH rec for their 4-color pairs, or really you can actually do this for any, because they can also overlap in a color, but the partners are kind of in the middle ground to the lower end of overall popularity. There are a couple decks that run Thrasios and anything else that are at the top of CEDH, or at least were. We have yet to kind of see how the banning of Flash has hit that format and change, and if it's going to change any of those decks, any of the Sushi Hulk decks. But there are a couple of very key combinations of them that are at the top end of the format. And then all of the other ones are just kind of seemingly random. Now, what does partner do? So, in addition to releasing kind of 5 4-color commanders when they did this, you look at partner, and what does partner do for you as a player? If you wanted to build a 4-color commander and they just released this set, and let's say they didn't release partner at all, you now have, in any given color combination, a single option, which is better than what you had previously, but not really great. It kind of doesn't let you, part of that commander ideology, part of that kind of commander player feel is being able to kind of really express yourself through your deck overall in your commander choice and things like that. So yes. it also kind of expands the design space of commanders, because it's Wizards has said this time and again, designing 4-color cards is very difficult to do. As a player, I definitely appreciate that. I definitely appreciate that being the case. Like, it's obvious it's the 4 color cards that do exist are very few and far between. And of them, like, I feel like the ones that I personally feel like have the most success are like, Daniel, you run one that's, is it Kineos and Tiro of Meletis, I believe?
Oh, yeah, I know. Kineos and Tiro Meletis, and I also have Yidris.
Yes, and you have Yidris, Maelstrom Wanderer, or whatever his suffix is.
It's Maelstrom something. Maelstrom Wanderer is the Maelstrom
Wanderer.
Card.
Yeah, Maelstrom Wanderer is a Maelstrom Wanderer. But like it's Kineos and Tiro, specifically for me as a player, hit it really well because they are 2 characters, and so it's easy for me as a player to go, oh, okay, one of these is 2 of these colors, the other person on this same card is the other 2 of these colors. And so it's kind of easy for me to get into that headspace where I'm like, compare that to Yidris. I kind of just accept that Yidris is 4 colors because Yidris is an insane ogre wizard, and I just kind of, but you could show me, if you were to present me with Yidris as a card, I would accept it if you had any 4 colors on it, because it's just kind of an insane mishmash of abilities. Specifically, though, with partner commanders, they kind of hit that same sweet spot that I personally really like about Kineos and Tiro, where it's literally any 2 cards now kind of make up a singular quote-unquote commander that you can just kind of cast half at a time. And so they are easier to come up with creatively because you can just come up with any 2 color creatures and you pair them together, and now you have a 4 color. That's a lot easier to kind of come up with. But I think
that my favorite thing about Kineos,
yes,
and
Kineos and Tiro of Meletis.
Yeah, I just combined their names because I ship it. I think my favorite thing about them is that they are a 4 color commander that is represented by 2 people, but they don't have partner.
They're just 2 people on one card,
which is silly because they're partners, and that's really funny to me. They're specifically a 4 color because they're 2 guys that are partners,
but they don't have partner.
But they're
in their
not
one
like
card.
Everything else. Every other, it's a weird thing, but I do like it.
Yeah,
I like it. It makes me laugh.
And so like with the first partner, there are pros and cons with it. The pro though is like I pretty recently was building a Jeskai deck that just wanted to draw cards and have a big hand, and I just needed those 3 colors. I didn't find a specific Jeskai commander that really kind of nailed the sweet spot for me, but at the time, I had built the deck before because the deck is currently running Brawlin and Shabraz from the new Ikoria set. Mm-hmm. Which they, as a commander pair who have partner with, which we'll get into in just a moment, actually synergize really well with it. But prior to that, I kind of was able to just look at the list of partner commanders and kind of build deck first and finish the deck by choosing my commanders. At the time, I had chosen Krom, Ludovic's Opus, and Bruised Harl, Boorish Herder. And so there's this kind of build your own element that the partner mechanic allows you to play with, where you are able to kind of build a commander deck in what I would argue is kind of the reverse of most people's experience of building a deck in Commander, where instead of taking your commander first and building around it, you can kind of construct your deck, construct your strategy, and then find a commander to kind of just fit it, to kind of tie everything together. And so they kind of allow you to express yourself through your deck building without tying it to a commander necessarily as a pro. And then kind of what else, and then segue from that to kind of cap off the wrap up on Partner 1, the first iteration of Partner, is that I would say kind of there's some pros and cons with that mechanic that we saw. I would say the pros are that any given deck with the same 2 partners in it is going to vary wildly from deck to deck, with the exception of CEDH, just because that kind of subset of the format is just built around building the strongest decks possible. So like any given Tymna and Thrasios deck is going to look pretty similar, but that's because those players are also doing similar things. But if you were to pull from just the kind of casual part of the community, any given I'm going to say Vile Smasher and a Kiri Lineslinger deck, any given deck list is probably going to be wildly different, even though they have the same commanders. And that's really different, or that's really unique to the partner commanders when you compare, like, in that same color identity. If you were to get two different Alesha Who Smiles at Death lists, those decks are, like, very similar. They're running a lot of the same cards in the 99 there in most cases. So there's a really high level of variance. And I think one of the things that draws me, and I imagine a lot of other players to the format, is that you just see a lot of different decks in Commander as a format. It's not like if you were to play Modern or anything like that, where you're just always going to see kind of a lot of similar or samey competitive level decks, because everyone's just trying to win. And so you see a lot of either same decks or same deck archetypes there. There's a high variance there. However, one of the cons, which we haven't touched on a ton, but it's just from the design perspective, every new partner card that you design or that Wizards designs gets exponentially more at a higher risk of becoming broken. So the format's kind of already found the two that are just busted, which is to say Thrasios and any of the other ones.
Yeah, it's really just they found the one.
They found the one, yeah.
And then you just kind of pick the next best one for what colors you're wanting to do.
Exactly, and I think that's kind of the point there, is they're worried about introducing a second Thrasios into the partner pool, and to know that you're going to do that ahead of time requires you to test any given card design with already the 15 other ones, and then with any other partners you're coming up with. And so that just kind of, it balloons the difficulty of making sure you're printing balanced cards into the format. Now, like if Wizards just, wants to power creep the game the hell out, then I bet you we're going to see a ton more partners, because then it won't matter. But
now, just real quick on that note, because we are going to have a Commander draft set coming out later this year.
Yeah, with Legends.
Yeah. Honest opinion, do you think that we're going to be getting any? Because if it's going to be a draft set, chances are, like, if you're going to be able to kind of draft 4 colors,
you need some kind of flexibility.
Do you think we're getting partners, like either just reprints of the ones we have, or do you think that we might get a couple smatterings of some other ones?
I would.
Do you think they do it?
For me personally, because I'll be honest, I hadn't actually even thought of that for Commander Legends. But what I would suspect, given that it is a draft set but focused on Commander, if I had to make the call now, and I think the only information that we know is that we've been revealed art for a Baron Sengir card, art for a Jeska card, and I think that's actually it. I think we've just been shown art for Baron Singer and Jeska, but nothing about their mechanics or anything. I would suspect, or at least, I would suspect out of Commander Legends, we get reprints of the current partners, just to kind of meet the demand for reprints. And we get a conspiracy set-like mechanic that allows you to add color identities or has effects on your commander choice during the draft portion of the
During
match.
the draft portion of the game? Okay.
Yeah.
That's kind of the direction I was thinking, but it would be like, they're 100% probably going to be reprinting Thrasios in there. And
Thrasios has gotten to...
I'd really hope so.
Yeah, he's gotten to $60 a card. He's ridiculous.
It's crazy. I have one.
Yeah. Yep. And you got one in your Commander deck, featured on Commander Versus.
Oh, it was featured on Commander Versus, and that's a point that I'm gonna try to bring up every episode.
We will. I think we can find a way.
To fame.
I feel like we can find a way. Now, so let's go with
Well, no, you were doing it. Go ahead.
No. I'll let you do it because it'll make it flow better.
Now, Drew.
Yes.
So basically, what you're saying is that partner, while is ultimately good, aside from one glaring hiccup, I would honestly say, like, if there's 15, then 14 not being busted and one that makes the other ones busted.
That's a better hit rate than Companion.
That's a pretty good hit rate.
Yeah, Companion's 7 out of 10.
But they are very open, and so sometimes you feel like the deck might lose some identity there because they are just sort of plug in for whatever colors you might. It's why they're so good, like in CEDH level, because it's just plug and play, get your colors, and then run all your good stuff afterwards.
Exactly.
So that will lead you to your next point of
partner with. So I think a thing I want to hit on, so partner with was kind of their second whack at the partner mechanic. What I want to kind of hit on as the thing that I think ties these two, and what I'm eventually going to use to kind of tie to companion, all of these mechanics that I'm talking about, and this is partner, partner with, and companion, they allow you to kind of mess with the commander part of the game. And now what do I mean by that? So previously, and I mean currently, part of the commander format is you pick a legendary creature, and that creature serves as your commander. I think part of this conversation also implies, or also pulls into, the planeswalkers that have been printed that specifically let you run them as commander. These are cards and these are mechanics that let you kind of mess with the commander part of the game in a way. Partner, in its current state, not only lets you get 4 colors, but technically that on its own is not messing with it, because in that same instance they printed 4 color commanders. So you can do that without them. But they allow you to have 2 creatures with kind of different effects in the zone. And so, like, a single card that had Thrasios, Triton Hero, and Timna the Weaver's abilities on a single card would be buck wild to see. Like a card that had this 4-mana scry ability and combat damage, you gain life, pay life, and draw cards and all that kind of stuff on a single card would at this point be insane to see, and it would just be on a Simic card. But
yeah, I would not be that surprised to see it.
Yeah, it would just be a green-blue card, and that's it.
I agree, it would be insane to see, but I would not be surprised.
I would not be surprised. I would be surprised about it having colors on it besides green and blue. Now,
it's like in those movies when somebody knows that they're hallucinating.
Yeah,
like, clearly I've lost my mind. But they just really undercut it. That's about how I would feel if they released a Simic commander with all of those abilities on one card.
They look out and they say, that man's 100 feet tall, wielding an axe made of balloons, and also he costs 1 green and a blue, has a double mana ability as a static buff, and then an infinite mana sink on him. So that's kind of what they all allow you to do, and so that segues us into partner with. Partner with, in that same vein, instead of it doesn't let you. God, this cat's so loud. 1 second, I'm going to open a door and stare at a cat, audience. I'm going to keep this part in so you hear the meowing.
Oh, no, I hear it. I definitely hear it. Can you not get, oh, there it goes.
And we're back.
Hello.
Partner with got introduced with the Battle Bond set, to kind of go over the history of it. And it was introduced there because of Battle Bond's overlap with Commander, in that they're both... I can't clawing at the door now. Multiplayer focused formats. Battle Bond being 2-headed giant, Commander being Commander. So, partner with, I'll use the example from... let's grab the ones that I run as partners. Peer Imaginative Rascal and Toothy Imaginary Friend. Peer Imaginative Rascal is 2 and a green for a 1/1 human who has partner with Toothy Imaginary Friend, which is when this creature enters the battlefield, target player may put Toothy into their hand from their library and then shuffle. In the 2-headed giant format that was Battle Bond Limited, this allowed your other teammate to have Toothy in their deck, and then if one of you played one of them, you could tutor out the other, and it kind of helped show the collaboration of the 2 players. In Commander, it works just like Partner, but they are limited into they can partner with one specific other card. So I can't run Peer Imaginative Rascal and...
Bruce Tarl,
Boorish Herder, or Account Eye of Chaos. I can only run Peer with his 1-to-1 partner. And then Toothy... Oh, wait, no. And then Peer, the other ability on Peer is that if one or more counters will be put on a permanent your team controls, put that many +1 of each of those counters are put on it instead. And then Toothy is 3 and a blue for a 1/1 illusion. Same ability. Partner with Peer. Someone on your team can go tutor Peer out of their deck. And whenever you draw a card, put a counter on Toothy. When Toothy leaves the battlefield, draw a card for each counter on it. So those cards are obviously, like, those are pretty strong. I think Peer and Toothy, I have a Peer and Toothy deck. I think they are the stronger that we've seen so far. But that's definitely, it is a kind of what I would call a reined in partner. It's you can test a lot more easily for how busted a partner with pair of cards is going to be, because you know how they're going to be combined. So you can kind of go, are these two abilities in concert? How strong, how broken, quote unquote, is this? Also, this ability, it also expands on partner in that it has use and it has relevance in non-commander formats. If they were to have a standard legal set that had partner with, that would enable you as a player to play a creature or play anything that had the ability on it that then tutored for another 1-to-1 card in your deck. A lot of the Planeswalker decks that they used to print kind of have that as well, where there'd always be like a signature card that let you go tutor for the deck walker. So they're also, in addition to that, they aren't having to spend this design time on a mechanic that is only useful in a single format. Partner with is expansive in kind of in those other ways. Now then, what are kind of the pros and cons there? I mean, I think the pro with partner with, as at least pertains to Commander, is, again, like I've said, it's a lot easier to design. It's a lot easier to actually come up with cards because the testing portion of that is not as intense. You're not having to exponentially test more and more of them. You just test them with the other proposed partner card, and then you're done. And as kind of this variance on the commander, I feel like partner with cards are kind of just ways for you to split a suite of abilities onto two split up cards. So for example, like Tyrannos, I've already forgotten that, Kyranos and Tyro of Meletis, we mentioned earlier, those are literally two characters who are partners, but they're on one card. It would be pretty simple. It'd be pretty simple to actually have Kenios, chosen of Kaidel or whatever, and Tyro, Greek god, as partner with, and they each have like two of those abilities. And so what I personally view partner with commanders as kind of really one card's worth of ability, or one card split across two, so that the abilities aren't just a big block of paragraph text. And so they're enabled to kind of make more complex cards, but make them more palatable by splitting their effects across two in a way that you can kind of still easily get to them.
They gotta save all of the big piles of text for the
Simic cards.
For the 3-drop Simic cards.
For the 3-drop Simic cards. And so that's kind of, it enables the game to, it does a thing that's good for the entire game as it grows, in that it enables you to allow for the game getting more complex without making individual cards like impossible to understand and play, because you can just split up this interaction across the partners you do. I don't think that's necessarily perfect. I don't even think that's the best case for it, but it's kind of a thing that I have noticed with the partners, because it's, given that they only partner with one another, a lot of them, it's very rare to see like a standalone toothy commander deck, but you technically could do that, but it's you see them, and it's literally, they are clearly all designed to play into what the other partner does. Now, the cons with partner with are that, I mean, the short answer is every partner with deck is the same. Every Akon and Zndrsplt were very popular out of the gate from Battle Bond, but every Akon and Zndrsplt deck, unless you are being, deliberately obtuse with it, those are coin flip decks. Like, you might, or your playgroup might have a homunculus tribal Akon Zndrsplt deck, but people who are building those decks in any kind of focus capacity are building them as coin flip tribal. They're running the same cards, and so they are a lot more similar to single card commanders, I would argue, than they are like the first iteration of partner, where there's like high variance between any given deck.
I'd even argue for that like a lot of the partners withs are probably even more so streamlined than just a single card commander.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I feel like what would you call it? A Grinzo Havoc Warden.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like that guy could go multiple directions, but I feel like Okan and Zndrsplt, those two guys, That's a deck. That deck
yeah.
is the same. There will be very few differences in those decks.
Yeah, and I mean, and it's part of that is to show the bond with the characters. Like it's from a Vorthosy kind of flavor perspective to have the players read these as these two creatures, these two cards are very clearly connected and bonded to one another. They need to have that overlap for that to kind of come across. But that narrows the deck, and you don't get the pros of partner one with partner with. You just don't get the same kind of benefit there where you can kind of build your own. Like I built Parentoothi. I feel like I have one of the more unique Parentoothi builds. I'll have the deck list in the description of the episode here, but it's I built it based on other imaginary creatures. But I mean, even then, if I'm looking at the deck list, I'm also running a lot of just kind of Simic 1/1 counter good stuff cards in there, and a lot of Parentoothi decks are running 1/1 counter or counter based Simic good stuff cards in the 99. So you have this negative to partner with, as it doesn't make any given commander that they put out more variant or more expressive. Like we have a coin flip commander now, but I mean, if you wanted all the coin flip cards before Zender Split and Account came out, you could just build like an Izzet deck, and that's all that people are building with these two cards.
I agree.
So all of that is just bedrock to say that how does Companion fit in to this space? So partner and partner with both let you kind of mess with they let you deviate from the commander selection part of the game by at a minimum having two cards in the command zone. So you're able to split up instead of just having the one card and building around it, one card suite of mechanics, or building a 5-color good stuff deck and throwing a Tog on top. Like, you're able to kind of mess with that a bit. And now Companion does kind of the same thing. And I think the clearest point I can put on as kind of how I look at it is Companion cards read in Commander to me as partners with legends. So a Companion can kind of have a partner with like ability with any legendary creature in Commander. So what do we mean by that? So it's Companions are already kind of built to exist outside of the game, just like your commanders do. Just like if you have partner commanders, just like they do as well. A given Companion, as long as you follow its deck building restriction, can in theory partner with any creature, any legendary creature that also meets its design criteria. So in like Obosh, for example, Obosh the Prey Piercer is 3, and then Hybrid Rakdos for, I think it's a Hellion Nightmare? Not positive.
Obosh?
But
Obosh is I do believe Obosh is a Hellion Nightmare.
So it requires
It really
you
should
that
be if it's
all
not
of
yet.
it requires that all of your spells in your deck are of an odd converted mana cost. Now, as long as you find a Rakdos or a commander that contains red and black and is an odd CMC, Obosh can functionally partner outside the game with that commander. And so it enables you to kind of, it is, I think, not quite as actually, I would argue on a numbers level, that's more expansive than partner. Any given partner creature can partner with at maximum 14 other cards. I think Obosh, as a single example, can partner with more than 14. Gyruda, I think, can partner with more than 14. So I feel like some of them are more restricted than others, but I feel like on a math level, Companion, if you view Companion like I do as having partners with a legendary creature, they mathematically have a higher degree of options than any two given partner commanders give you. Now, what they don't give you that partners do is they don't expand your color options. And I think that's actually a key thing as to why I like them as a partner-like mechanic so much. So a lot of the partners kind of get broken or they get overly powerful just because they are only additive. It's any two partners you select only let you do more with a deck. And part of the commander format, from deck construction to the way things work out, is the restrictions that are placed on you as a player. You pick your commander. That commander limits your color identity. You can't have duplicates. You can't have more or less than 100 cards. There's a lot of restrictions in the format. So I feel like as an initial thing, really as a second point, Companion plays into that restrictive element. They serve as kind of opt-in additional restrictions. Now,
I just looked through the 5-color cards, 5-color commander options by themselves, and Obosh is legal to use in, I think it was I forgot the number, but it was most of the 5-color commanders. You can have Obosh.
You can just toss
as a
Obosh in
companion. I want to
Yeah.
say it was 19, might have been 14. I lost track because I went to Grixis and just saw how many more places you could just have Obosh.
You can just toss
there.
them in.
I'm trying to
Yeah.
do the math of figuring out how many things can Obosh really partner with.
Yeah, and I'll say, like, it's not as though these are just like auto includes if you wanted them. It's like Obosh only having odd CMCs is a real restriction to a deck. You are really limiting yourself in it. But as if you are a player like myself, I really enjoy just the process of deck building. I really like that part of the game. That's adding more stuff to it. Whereas like my experience with building just generic partners was, oh, these partners fit my colors. Yeah, sure. And just kind of toss them on top. So I think as my first two things, it's one, I feel like mathematically they have more options than partner gives you. You're not waiting for any given legendary creature that fits any given companion's color identity is a new possibility for you to build a new deck, is essentially kind of, it just adds. So it has the pro that Partner 1 has, where each new card printed with it has an exponential growth on the amount of options you as a player have. But they are, because no given card with the ability adds to any deck it could go in, it just further restricts the deck that it goes in. You don't have as much of the concern of it being busted. There's an example already, obviously with Lutri, but Lutri is just, it's kind of I think the exception that proves the rule there, where Lutri doesn't give any restrictions to the decks it goes in, but that is the exact reason it was banned, because it just kind of slots into a deck with no other considerations. Every other companion's got that has some level of restriction to it. That is it's something you at least have to kind of think through when choosing to include them. And again, yeah, it's like I said, it's with any given legendary, you're always getting more options with companions. Definitely if they continue to print companion into the future, they kind of immediately when they're printed work with any previous legendary, work potentially with other companions. That I think is going to be really fun if we end up seeing that. Is you run a companion as the commander and a companion as a companion. But then it's kind of like my third point is, what do companions do to existing decks that they are added to? So this is another deck list. I'll include this in the description, but this is one that I have recently built around Zakama Primal Calamity. Now, Zakama is a pretty powerful deck prior to companions existing. Zakama is just for the people who are listening to this and their hands are both on fire, so they can't actually type and look up cards. Zakama Primal Calamity is 6 generic red, white, and green for a 9/9 Elder Dinosaur with Vigilance, Reach, and Trample. When Zakama Primal Calamity enters the battlefield, if you cast it, untap all lands you control, and then it has 3 abilities. For 2 in a red, it deals 3 damage to a creature. For 2 in a green, it destroys an artifact or an enchantment. And for 2 in a white, you gain 3 life. Now, that deck is very strong on its own. That deck, the typical play pattern with a Zakama deck is you're expecting them to cast and bounce Zakama an infinite number of times, and then use a infinite amount of all their mana to kind of combo off. It's usually in some kind of storm type shell that you see this deck. But what if we kind of hone that in a bit? So the deck list that I have in the description is a deck I built that is around Zakama and the previously mentioned card Zerda the Dawnwaker. Zerda's requirement, because I don't believe we mentioned it before, is that Zerda's companion requirement is that each permanent card in your starting deck has an activated ability. Now, in a given Zakama deck, you're able to... That cat is back. Meow! Indeed. Oh, that shut it up. That's wild. So
Hey, good job, man.
you're able to run kind of any powerful creatures that have, any ability that's relevant. You're just kind of focused on the power that you get with Zakama. If you want to run Zerda's added benefit to that deck is it abilities you activate that are not mana abilities cost 2 less to activate. This effect can't reduce the mana to cost less than 1 mana. And for 1 mana and tapping it, target creature can't block this turn. So that mana reduction on activated abilities is not nothing. Reducing them by 2 is very strong. Taking the cost of an activation from 3 to 1 is already, it enables a couple of infinite combos. So that there's a lot of potential for power there. But at the same time, every permanent needing to have an activated ability is a consideration you have to kind of comb through. My experience of building this deck was when I decided I wanted to do it, I was able to actually build the deck pretty quickly because my options were so narrow that I was able to kind of really find the things I wanted to just meet my requirement and play in the way that I wanted to pretty quickly. And the other side of that is you kind of get this feel for, you get this partner with like feel of what my deck is going to be doing. So in a similar way that if I were to flip over an Akon and Zender Split, you know what my deck's going to be. You go, oh, this is going to be a deck that is coin flipping, yada, yada, yada. If I flip a Zakama and a Zerda, you haven't seen this deck a lot just because Zerda is so new, but you have a better idea of what you're going to be seeing across the table. You see those two and you go, oh, this is going to be an activated abilities type deck. It implies a bit more about it, and it makes this Zakama deck stand out from other Zakama decks that you're going to run into.
And I think another reason why I'm pretty on board with Companion in this way is there's always this idea of perceived threat. Like there are some times when you'll just flip over, you'll flip over a card and you try to make the argument, and
attracts
that argument people do when they flip over something like, Urza, and they're just like, oh, but this isn't one of those. This
Urza
isn't
decks.
this isn't one of those Emery decks. This isn't one of those broken Kenan decks. This one's different, y'all. You won't even believe it. And if anytime somebody says that to me, I say, you are a liar and you've made a fool of me. And I know that, and I refuse to accept it. But you flip over like Zakama, and you flip over like a Kahira, the Orphan Guard, or a Zerda. Well, now I'm intrigued because I feel like, yes, if you get out Zakama and you get out Zerda, all of Zakama's various activated abilities will cost 1 mana of their color. And yes, that is powerful and looking at it, you're like, okay, so this card and this card means that's a problem. Yeah. But then you also think about, but every other thing in the deck that is a permanent is also going to be moving on tap speed. So if you don't have a haste enabler, you're like, okay, that's not that bad.
Yeah, it gives
you see the thing that makes you actually go, you know what? Okay.
You're able to kind of square up and you're able to kind of pinpoint what my deck's going to be across the table, even if we've never met, you haven't looked at my deck list or anything like that. Or I'll say, what I think is like a stronger example, I haven't built this deck, but if you were to play Atraxa, Praetor's Voice, undoubtedly one of the strongest commanders in the format. I will not even look this one up just because I know what it is. It is white, green, black, and blue for a 4/4 Angel Horror. It has Flying, Vigilance, Death Touch, and Lifelink, and at the end of each of your turns, you get to proliferate. That deck is ridiculously powerful, even if built on like a moderate budget. But if you flip over an Atraxa in a normal pod, people go, oh, damn. And you try to go, wait, this one is about spore counters and it's Saproling Tribal. And you go, oh, well, I'll believe that in game 2. Right now I'm going to focus your deck all the way down. But if you were to flip over an Atraxa and flip over a Garuda that we mentioned at the top of the show, you go, this is an Atraxa deck that's running all even CMC cards. That deck can still be Atraxa Super Friends, the most powerful version of the deck. But adding that extra wrinkle means that, okay, you're not running Soul Ring, you're not running all the 1-drop artifacts, you're not running the 1-drop removal. even if your deck is at the end of the game still oppressive, still winning through the same things that a standard Atraxa deck is, as a player, I'm actually more interested in seeing that, because I know that to build it, you had to kind of get creative. Whenever you deny yourself access to, in Garuda as an example, in that case, you denied yourself access to every odd CMC card. That's not nothing. That's half of the cards that you don't get to play in this deck. So even when I'm being, beaten by a very strong commander in its strongest form, or second strongest, or whatever, I'm more willing to kind of go into that, because, I, as a player, do not enjoy stacks. I have tried building stacks decks. I have played against stacks decks. It's not a thing that speaks to me as a player. I am more willing to kind of, tolerate it in a lot of pods, depending on the deck I'm playing against. In an Atraxa Stacks Proliferate Planeswalker build with Garuda as its companion, if I at least know that you had to do something creative instead of just, going to EDH Rec, finding all of the most played cards and just net decking it, I know that you had to really kind of do something for it. I'm more willing to, enjoy your deck with you, even if it's beating my brains out the whole time.
They still get Astral Cornucopia and Everflowing Chalice. So
they do still get those two very key cards. So again, it's not ultimately this episode is just to
X
say
3 times is 0 still.
Everybody just build Atraxa Garuda and we're all going to have a fun time.
I'll tell you what, you approach my table with Atraxa Umori, I'm invested. That's one where I'm down for that. I'll sit across from that and I'll say, you know what?
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah. Let's go.
Well, and the other thing I'll point out, so like in the example that I have built with Zacama Zerta, those are two cards that are just... Zerta is just further empowering what Zacama does. If I have built the deck right, it's just making Zacama play better, you could say. But here's kind of the balancing act there. Even in that case where you go like, oh, Zerta just means that you're just building this one strategy better because you have access to this other card. Different from partner and different from partner with. If you have two partners that have either partner or partner with together, your removal of those cards is at best temporary, which means there's really, like, you can slow a deck with partners down from having its two partners really synergize and really buff each other up, but you can never really stop that from happening. You just can't, because they're always going to be able to go, that goes back to my command zone, I recast it. With a companion, if you were to have a commander and companion pair that got really oppressive, there hasn't been a lot of experimentation in the space, so we don't have an example to point to, but let's just say for the sake of argument that Zerta Zacama is that pair. Every time you see a Zerta Zacama deck, your eyes groan, you flip the table, and you just settle in for just a bad game that you're going to hate. In those examples, if you go like, oh, Zerta just empowers Zacama too much, let Zacama do all this broken stuff, in that game, if you get rid of Zerta, Zerta is gone. Which means that my deck is now in a position where I had to accommodate this self-imposed restriction. I had to build my deck in such a way, but if in the game, if your threat assessment is on point and you're able, and I get out of control, if you're able to answer one of the key pieces that's letting me get that out of control, it just is answered in a way that anything that goes back to the command zone can't be.
And I do like that a lot as well, because I do like kind of the... You know me,
the risk reward.
I like to play all-in decks a lot of the time. I don't run too many... I like my cantrips. I like my fast mana. I want to get my dumb thing out, and I want to do my dumb thing, unless my dumb thing is a long-term annoyance, in which case then bringing stuff back from the dead is what I want to do.
Absolutely.
But I love all-in strategies. So if I see someone sitting like from me with a companion, I know, like, especially if it's like Zacama and Zerta, Zerta is very important for what that deck wants to do.
Very
and I'm like,
much
you know
so.
what? Let's do that. That looks fun. And a Karuga, I know that they're going real hard on the nothing cost less than 3.
Yes,
and so
absolutely.
I go, okay, here we go. This is good.
Or yeah, and that I feel is like it's a self-correcting element to how companion interacts with commander, because we already have we already have an 8th card in the command zone in commander if you want to look at it that way, but it self-corrects against any given companion, because it's, again, companions, to bring it full circle to the start of the show, companion has kind of been shown in a lot of other formats to just be ridiculously powerful and kind of format warping around it. But in Commander, because this format is accustomed to your Urza deck is really bad, because even if I get rid of Urza for now, Urza just comes back next turn and I have to deal with it again and again and again. Companion, it brings with it this new element, this really fun new piece that you can play with as a deck builder, as a Commander player. But if it is too oppressive in a given game, if your opponents are just running removal, which they should be, then they can just hard answer it and then continue with the game. It's not a thing that, unless, we get a companion that has like a squee ability that lets it be cast from anywhere or something like that. But yeah, like currently, it's, even if they print more companions into the future, even if there happens to be some really oppressive combo like Timna Thrasios is in CEDH, they don't have that downside of being impossible to permanently answer at a table. If you sword Zerta, which is 1 white to get rid of it, Zerta is hard gone for the rest of my game, which means I have to just really kind of pivot, which is interesting for me to play because, it's as commander, I like having to answer other people answering my cards. That's fun for me. And it means that if I was really oppressive to the table, as long as you're running things that answer my threats, you can do something about it. You don't just have to sit and idly wait while I just kind of take 47 turns to win. So it's a version of the partner-like thing that lets you, again, it lets you have, as a player, kind of flex out and spread out what the commander can be over 2 cards that are different flavors. You're open to kind of any legendary as long as you're meeting the other requirements, etc. But at least currently, I don't see companion being a thing where if I see one across the table, I'm feeling worse about it than anything else. I feel like all of the combinations that I have been able to think of, I think I am at the very least, and this is part of it is because they're new, but I'm excited to see what that deck is going to do. A lot of that's because they're new, but it's, in the worst case, if it's what it's going to do is something that's really mean and I hate it, it's better than it being another commander. It's better than it being a partner-like ability because I know that I can hard remove it mid-game.
Think of it this way. This is the example I like to think of. Because I you know how we used to build decks? We used to build character decks where the idea was that the deck was a guy or a girl that did not exist, but this is how they would have been had they been real. Messed up stuff we used to do. But, so I like to, I've always played Magic as kind of a story. I like the events that take place during it. It's about the journey, not necessarily the ending for me.
Yeah.
And so if I'm sitting across a table and I'm looking at everybody's commanders, I like to view it as this is everybody's story. And if somebody has a companion, it's just like, oh, and this guy is letting me read the back of his book.
Oh, yeah. I see what you're saying there.
It's like, this is everybody's story. This is their book. But this guy's letting me read, like, one of the reviews that New York Times
blurb
did.
Of it.
It's just like, wow, the odd converted mana costs were crazy. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Okay. All right. Yeah. And so you kind of are entering in. It's I, as a player with a companion deck, even if I'm building a really oppressive, annoying, awful version of a deck, I'm having to give the pod a little bit more info about my deck by my choice of companion. I have to let you know a little bit more about what I'm doing to also get that power. So I had to make the deck concession. I have to give up some info, but I get that ability. And I feel like that is a really good space for expanding what I personally, as a player, I would prefer going forward. I would like to see more companions more so than I would like to see more partners, more partner withs, more planeswalkers as commanders, because I really like what they do to the format more than I like those other options personally.
I would, and I think I'm not going to, you know what, I will say I speak for most of the Magic the Gathering community. Why not? I don't know. But
Who's
I
gonna
will
stop
say
you?
that
Most of the
if they
community?
are going to do companion again, which they've already said it's very difficult to just make the cards
To just do.
in general, they will not do it in a standard legal set again. They will do it in a draft set, a supplemental set, which is actually where I would prefer to see it because
Also,
drafting
Same thing.
Ikoria, incredibly fun.
Yes.
Just to reiterate, and so using all this stuff, it's a blast, and I think because it is true. The Wizards has managed to do something very weird where they said we wanted to bring the joy of Commander to Standard, but what they instead did was they took out, because you can play play sets of things in Standard, so they instead just got rid of some of the they messed up the probabilities. Because there was always an 8th card in your hand, and that 8th card was always going to do the one thing.
Yep.
And so it just makes that really difficult. And it only got worse as you went back. But in a 100-card singleton deck,
Yes.
it doesn't matter to me how tuned you make it. I would be surprised if you could make like a level 10 EDH deck that has a companion. Companion will always mean that there's some kind of power down here.
Yeah.
Like, even if you get all the best even converted mana cost cards, that just means you don't have any of the best odd converted mana cost cards.
You don't have,
and everybody else's deck will have both.
They'll be able to have them. Yeah, it's what I kind of want to, as I think I want to kind of build on your point earlier. What I would actually love to see is I would love to see partners with hit standard formats and companion hit supplemental. Currently, we've only got partners with in supplemental formats. We've gotten it in the Commander 20 product, and we've gotten it in Battle Bond. I really like partners with in standard and constructed formats because you have to draw the card like anything else. You play it, it tutors just like tutors that already exist. And so it's not as kind of like format warping because it just tutors for a single other half to a card. But like you said, its companion is super fun and limited, and it allows it to still hit Commander. And I think companion, even though it's designed to bring Commander to standard formats and to tournament Magic, I feel like companion is best in limited and it's best in Commander. I feel like that's where it has the least kind of feel bads as a card mechanic in formats. It's the least format warping there. And I've been arguing kind of this episode, I really like it hitting, I like the mechanic, given that I do only play limited and I only play Commander, but I really like it. I want to see more of it, and I feel like it'd be better off for all, like the Magic community as a whole, if you want to do a companion, you want to bring a little bit of Commander in, you just put partners with into standard and you put companion back into supplemental in its place. You just swap where those two get revealed, and I feel like that's the best case overall.
All right. Well, tell us what you think about companion in Commander. Have any of you guys built a Commander deck that takes advantage of companion? I know that Drew has one on the way. Throughout this episode, I was thinking about Crom Ludovic's Opus Vile Smasher the Fierce Obosh, just so I can start with a 10-card hand. I think that sounds sick.
That's really
and I want, because you know what else you can throw in there? Nekusar. And I love Nekusar.
So to the audience, if you have built a companion deck, what has been your experience with it? If not, we would urge you to try and then kind of come back with what has your experience been, either during the building process, having played it, and then what do you think about kind of my argument with companion being the most fixed version of partner? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Why? Kind of throw all of that into the comments.
And we will say, just in regards to, as the whole episode was, to Commander specifically, we know that companion is worse than everything else. We know that. Don't talk about that. It
has a 20% failure rate in every other format. 2 out of 10 are banned. So, but yeah. Other than that, the loop has been demonstrated. I moved to instep and concede. I have been Drew.
And I am currently Daniel. Thank you all for listening, and have fun playing your game.
Indeed. And scoop it up. Bye.